What's happening, YouTube? Godot Studios here, and today we're gonna do a little bit of a continuation and a hybrid with my Return to Retro series. So if you haven't already, in this video, which is the RHI Performance Comparison Part 2, I took a Return to Retro project from UE5, and I went from deferred rendering, where I had broken out all those RHIs, and swapped over to forward rendering. And we did a very similar performance comparison on forward rendering with screen space ambient occlusion, distance field shadows, and distance field point lights. Basically, if you haven't watched my series already, this is stretched point lights that shadow cast selectively. If I'm not near an overlap volume, which let me stop this here and I can show you. This light has an overlap, and if you cross this overlap, it changes its lighting mechanism from a distance field shadow casting light to a shadow map shadow casting light. All of these things were done to get the frame time down, and in the previous video I show that in forward rendering on a package project, not in the editor, you're probably never going to get those type of numbers in the editor. Unreal Engine 5 is just a beast when it comes to overhead, so yeah, you're just probably not going to get anything close to that in the editor. Let me see, max. Yeah, even with VSync turned off, I am capping out here at about 200 frames per second. But in the video, if you guys did watch it, you'll see that I'm getting close to, right here looking out at the sky in the scene, around 550 and some change, and that's in the standard desktop forward rendered pass. You know, with this very low textile density. These are all 64 by 64 or 32 by 32 resolution textures. They're filtered at nearest to give them that very sharp pixelated look. And in retro fashion, all of these lights aren't casting shadows here in UE5. This is a billboard material, so all of these volumetric effects that you see here on these point lights and spotlights are fake. They're materials, and I go over how to do all of this to achieve a very, very performant game in this kind of old school bloomy aesthetic. So we do have a little bit of bloom implemented in this scene, as you can see here. So you get a little bit of that sun shaft occlusion going on. Granted, this is a height fog, so like we're, you know, not to dive too deep into the technicalities, but volumetric lighting is not on the directional light here, so like we pretty much, let me see if I can find the, it is casting a volumetric shadow. It has volumetric screen intensity, but you will see if I type in fog here, it's just an exponential height fog in the scene. I'm not using volumetric fog or volumetric scattering. So just enough to get the look that I want. Post-processing is basically screen space ambient occlusion. There is no TAA in this scene. Anti-aliasing is pretty much turned off so that we can hit native. I don't want to be lying to you, so let me check the anti-aliasing method real quick, and we will Go to the output log. It's anti-aliasing 3. Yeah, so the default project settings is anti-aliasing 3, which is MSAA, but whenever I packaged out in the previous video, I did toggle between the two so you guys can see. It's essentially free. It's like 1 millisecond or half a millisecond, if that, in UE5, so it's not too much. Anyway, in the previous video, I told you guys that I would do something interesting, and that was to bring all of this over to a Godot project, and try to stay true to the rendering techniques that are in the UE5 project, so that we can have a one-to-one, apples-to-apples performance comparison on this retro rendering aesthetic, and see what Godot is capable of. And I gotta plug this little tool here, because if you haven't heard of it and you're working across both engines, it's amazing. It's called Unreal to Godot. What's going to happen is you're going to export to Godot. It's going to collect everything in the scene, lights, overlaps, etc., and it's going to attempt, and I use that phrase very carefully, because not everything goes over to Godot nicely. Let's put it that way. Everything goes over to Godot. It will try to make a node out of everything. It will try to make a prefab out of all of your blueprints, and it will even try to like interpret some of those scripts. So if you have like print debug statements, it will try to create a script for you that does something very similar in Godot. However, I do have to say that there's a little bit of work needed to finish up your scene once it exports, because it is not these two different engines handle things a lot differently in some ways, and I'll go into the nuts and bolts of that and speak on that a little bit, and we'll probably come back to this project so I can touch on a few things as I discovered them and started asking questions about why. So I have quite the surprise for you guys. So because Godot is so light and so easy to open, I didn't even have to pause the video or like wait on anything fancy. We're just gonna go open this freaking project up right here, so you guys can see how fast this happens. It is voila. Before I could finish a sentence, Godot is open with the project, and before everybody goes, wow, that's amazing, I did make modifications to this. This is not what it looked like when it came over. I had to adjust a few things. I did add more directional lights here, or what they directional lights, omnidirectional lights here, or point lights here, to illuminate the scene the way that I wanted it. Godot has different parameters on their omnidirectional lights, like range, annotation, and size, all do different things compared to Unreal. Now, the scene was 1-to-1, so the size, the color parameters, all of that was 1-to-1. However, Godot's rendering techniques are different than Unreal, so in that sense, I wanted to make adjustments. As you can see, I do have a sky box here. I do have a sun. We are occluding this sun's, bloom, or whatever you want to call it, that old retro bloom. The thing that I want to make note of here is in Godot, I was actually able to enable sign distance field global illumination. Keep in mind, Unreal doesn't have a global illumination method, not a dynamic one without baking your lights. But in Godot, in Forward Plus, not only do you have sign distance field global illumination, but you also have occlusion. So you have SDF-AO out of the box, just running and working, as well as volumetric real volumetric directional light shafts coming off of these directional lights that I didn't have to use the fake foam fake cone for. I mean, I could if I wanted to, but I wanted to show you guys that this real time dynamic shadow casting light can have volumetrics on it in the scene. Also over here, I didn't have to fake the bloomy candle effect. This is just basically me turning on glow here and normalizing the levels a little bit, and then playing around with this intensity and strength, and I have a very nice looking per candle lit glow. And all that I really did for performance reasons is, instead of in Unreal, like where I made an overlap to detect the difference between how near or far you are from a light, to switch between distance, field, base shadows, and shadow maps. I just decided I don't need to cast a shadow on every other point light. That way I'll make the draw a little cheaper for overlaps on the shader. Also, while I was working on this, whenever you import your textures here, Unreal, you have to go into each texture and you set like a max. You set like a max value on your texture. I wanted to show you guys like the size limit here and the import screen, because for each one of these assets, you are going to want to go find the imported scene, the cube, find the material. So here's the mesh. There's going to be a surface override material right here, and then this is going to be tucked off somewhere. So like, as you can see, it's in shaders in my Cobble 1. So you'll want to go find the shader that it creates for you, and you'll want to hunt down the resource that it uses. This is Cobble 1, so we'll go look at that. In the material viewer here, I wanted to show you how you achieve the nearest filter on a texture parameter. So if you look in your material graph, similar to Unreal, and I'll just pop this bad boy up all the way, you're going to have this texture parameter 2D. This is what allows you to set the texture parameter that your material is going to use, or your master material is going to use. And then right here, you have this filter value that you set to nearest. And that's how you're going to achieve this, basically raw pixel look without blurring your textures all up to hell and back. And then I will also show you the project settings, so that you can see what we're paying for here. So for performance things, let's talk about performance things first. You're going to want to go to your physics, and you want to go to common, and you're going to want to do physics interpolation at a fixed step of 60 frames. Doesn't matter if you're getting 500 or 1,000 or whatever. The awesome thing about Godot's Jolt engine is that it can do fixed frame stepping, and there's not really a need to process your physics thread more than 60 frames per second. You can also have interpolation, or like, basically there was a jitter fix old value here that they had with this turned off, but now that you have this, just turn it on and set this jitter fix to 0, and you're gonna have butter smooth movement and physics threads inside of Godot. So that's one thing that I want to tell you about. Another thing is you can control your steps. I haven't changed any of these default settings. They seem to perform really well. You'll see that here in a minute. And then the next thing we're going to talk about is occlusion culling. Right now you can see that the default value is what I'm using. In this type of game, such a small game, I'm not scaling up right now. You can basically squeeze more stuff as you grow your scene. So that's something you need to be aware of. And then we will talk about things that we are actually using right now in the rendering side of life. Where is the render? Lights and shadows. I am using soft shadow filter quality, so it's basically soft low. You can go even higher than this if you would like to. I don't find a need to for this project. Same thing down here for positional shadow. So just, that information. If you wanted to optimize your GI even more, you could use half resolution. I'm using full-blown resolution. So the reason I'm showing you all of these things is because I'm about to tell you what Godot is running at for me. And I want you to know that I've not squeezed everything out of this thing. It can go even further than this, which is amazing. It's actually mind-boggling. And we'll get into that in just a second. But I just want to show you that I have not pushed it to its max at how much I can cut out of this thing. Some of these things I'm choosing the artistic aesthetic that I want, and I'm also telling myself that I don't need to squeeze any more out of this. Now it's about turning features on. it's no longer about how do I cut the overhead. The amount that I'm getting out of this engine is insane. So now it's more like what can I actually give myself? What can I turn on? So anti-aliasing, you'll see I have it disabled. At native 1080p, running a scene like this with this kind of aesthetic, I can turn on MSAA. I've turned it all the way up, actually, to the slowest at 8x, and it literally cost me half a millisecond. It's pretty much free. However, another thing I've noticed about Godot is with the roughness limiter, which is the default value, on here, running at full screen, I'm not seeing a huge need for the aesthetic that I have to even have AA, similar to with Unreal. So I'm making a conscious decision to just not care about it. So if I'm gonna hit play here so you guys can take a look around this scene. Actually, let me hit F8, stop this, and we're gonna go to game, and we're gonna pop this bad boy out so that you guys can get a full screen view. I think there's actually a way for editor. Let me go see. Editor docs. I don't I don't want to spend too much time digging into how to show you some of this stuff while I'm actually playing it. There are options that we can turn on, which all of these are these little, options, but there are inspection options that we can turn on during play to where we can see these frame time numbers. Look at this frame time, 1,270 frames per second, 1.43 milliseconds. Insane. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna hit play here. I'm gonna walk around the scene a little bit, and yeah, all of these lights are dynamic. They're all casting real-time shadows. These volumetric effects on this directional light, or spotlight, should I say, here. The bloom effects here. The shafts that are coming through here. The glow that is applied to these guys. None of this is faked materials. This is all just Godot doing Godot things. It is crazy to me that we're seeing. I'm gonna hit F11 here, and we're gonna Alt Tab, and I'm gonna go to the debugger. I mean, 820, 830 frames per second. That's what we're getting here. And I mean, this I started asking questions like, how am I doubling UE5's forward rendering pass? How am I, like, what is Godot doing that UE5 are, let me rephrase that, because the technical question you should be asking is, what are you paying for? What is Unreal Engine doing that Godot isn't? That cost so much? And that's an interesting question. So we're gonna talk about that. So first and foremost, when you start working with Godot, what you're gonna realize is that, like, when you make these scenes, they're scenes, and these scenes consist of a node that may consist of like another scene, and that other scene may have something. Let's open this anyway. It's just a static mesh with a mesh instance 3D, right? So Godot is going to go, oh, this is a mesh instance. It goes inside of a node, and that mesh may or may not have, and this is a cube GLB, right, that it's referencing. That mesh may or may not have collision, and it may or may not have other data associated with it, like a material, a texture, etc., 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 right? So let's go even further than that. If we click on the mesh data here, we can click this little button in Godot, and it's going to give you more options. Okay, does it have UVs? Well, obviously it has a UV1 because it's unwrapping a texture. But here's the thing: Godot doesn't make UV2s for every object by default. So in a dynamically lit scene where you're not baking lights, in Godot, you're not paying memory allocation and memory overhead for a light map channel. If it by its nature, it says you don't need that. I'm not going to do it for you. And so you don't pay for it. Another thing is that, like, you're not paying for collision for every object that it creates. The node itself is not a tickable class, unlike Unreal. Let's jump back over there. Each one of these static mesh actors, they're a static mesh actor class. It's a class. It's like the root. If you're familiar with C++ and Unreal Engine, this is not a static mesh object that's in your world. It's an actual class that has things that are running on it in C++ in the background that can be overridden. It has a constructor. It has it has a transform value. It has world position coordinates. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, even on a static mesh actor. And every time you drag one of these static meshes into the scene, there's overhead associated with this thing. It can be turned into a blueprint class and further added to, and by default, there's a certain amount of stuff you're paying for out of the gate that Unreal Engine just does for you. If we go check out this static mesh, it's gonna generate a collision. I'm not gonna hit remove. Let's visualize. Where these freaking buttons have changed so much that I found myself asking, and I'm like, Unreal, I don't even know you anymore. Yeah, it's 5-6 first world problems, not y'all's problem. But yeah, so Unreal is gonna automatically create a collision for you. It's gonna automatically create a light map channel for you. If we go over here and we go to UV channel 1 and UV channel 0, you got them both. These are things that utilize memory. These are things that eat computational load on a PC. Like, if you see it, it's not free. Like, that's going to be like this thing I'm gonna have to like coin that term. If it exists, you pay for it in some way, shape, or form. Now, it might come out in the wash when you go later on and you spend 30 minutes cooking out of UE5 into a package project. There's some CVAR, some editor setting that you can check that says, hey, I don't care about this, throw it away, right? But at the end of the day, things like this usually make it through the game. It's going to go, oh, this thing has a light map. And it doesn't matter if I'm using baked lighting or not. I'm going to pack this data in here because it's part of the asset. It has a collider. I'm going to pack this in. I'm going to associate it with a collision channel. I'm going to add it to the pool, the tick pool for colliders for the physics thread. All of those things cost. In Godot, this scene right here that I'm showing you guys has a collider on these base tiles. These base tiles are simply a scene with a node. There's a transform value associated with, there's no scripting going on here. There's no, for each of these things, do some tick, do some overhead, pay this additional cost. Like, there's none of that going on here. It's a static object in the world, and the most you're going to pay for it is a sweep check or a collision check on whatever you've added to the static body 3D for the collision shape. And I've done this. I've went in, highlighted the mesh, clicked this, and added a collision shape for this so that I can walk around on the surface of this scene. Same thing with each one of these textures. I've went in, I found the texture, I went to the import button, and I basically set the max size on each one of the textures that I'm utilizing. Let's see if I can find an example of that. So we'll go to the bunker and we'll look for like the wall concrete BC. You'll see I set a 64 resolution size limit, and then I turned off the map generation because I don't need it based on the aesthetic that I have here. And then I re-imported, which then gave me this really super sharp pixelated aesthetic that I'm going for here. Yeah, I went into the environment and I created the sky with the world environment, just stuck it inside of a sky sphere node. This is just a node, a container. And then I added the directional light that you see here to line up with that sky. And I set up its cascade shadow map split method here. And that's pretty much it. And we're with GI and the collision on this bottom shape here and all of the same type of static mesh objects that you see inside of the Unreal Engine project. We're doubling UE5's frame rate, and that's with turning on the AA method. We're still coming in cheaper. Any AA method that we want to use, that's with actually supporting volumetric fog. So like volumetric fog is enabled, and we can get crazy with this slider here on this density. I mean, it really does come down to like, how do you want this to look now? How much do you want this light shaft to cut in here? And the other thing I got to give Godot credit for, let's undo and undo, is the artistic freedom is kind of nuts. I'm really digging like the tone map options that it has. Like you have ASIS here. If anybody's familiar with Blender, you're gonna recognize like some of these shading methods here for each one of the materials on these boxes that we have. If we highlight the mesh and we go to this material, like you can get into like telling it how you want each material to, like, is it Phong shaded? Is like what is your filtering method? Like the artistic freedom that you have here under each one of these like modes, with each one of these draws, which each one of the like diffuse, like how are we doing burly? Are we doing tune? Like there is probably more options at my disposal here that just makes me like, I don't know, man, like feel a little bit more liberated. You know, we instantly see these impacts of the change. Not to say that like I would care about going with Burley versus Lambert. Some people really do care about these kind of things. Me, I just like, it depends on the project that I'm working with, whether or not, you know, I care about that. Now, the tone mapper stuff and the shadows, and the opacity of the shadows and the way AO works, yes. Like, those things are relatively important to me. Those are things that I will take the time to tweak. I will take the time to understand how expensive they are. You know, we don't even have SSAO enabled because we're using, you know, sign distance field GI, which offers you this AO and this darker scene here with within the occlusion of objects. Oh yeah, and this is another thing I wanted to point out. So if you're questioning yourself about like Godot's ability to render really nice looking materials with normals and specular, etc., reflections, this should, let me see if I can, we'll just push play and go over there, right? I'd like to kind of eliminate some of those concerns for you. This engine does an amazing job at retaining the quality of high end, very, very detailed normals, reflective surfaces, etc., and light behavior. It yeah, it does an amazing job to me. It's even has this AO, this ambient occlusion that's being applied to the wall that it's sitting up against because of the sign distance field there. These barrels, I left the high definition texture in versus the low. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just was not expecting to be, yeah, so walking near these lights with all of these overlapped dynamic casting lights and bloom effects here, you're going to get a frame drop. Looking at these lights and walking in this area on UE5, if you refer back to the video, was like 200 frames and some change, maybe give or take, maybe bumping into 300 if I remember right, like 290 something. Yeah, we're at 605. We weren't even getting 605 looking out here at the sky, looking at nothing in the previous video. So, you know, apples to apples there for you. And the other thing, too, I'd like to point out is I was packaging out the UE5 project. Godot is handling this load and dealing with all of this while the editor is running. This isn't a packaged project. I'm not having to, like, again, UE5, let's hit F8 here. If we leave the editor open and we test here, you're what, 200 frames? I have to actually package this out to get anywhere close to that 2 millisecond cost on the overhead. So like, just keep that in mind. The editor itself is adding an amazing amount of overhead to this scene. Yeah. So if we go back over here, you can see, we'll walk up to this low texture resolution chest that's over here, these two objects, and you can see I've cut the textures down. Now, in Unreal, I'm going to show you guys how you would do this. You'd find the static mesh. We go find out what material it's using. And here you're going to have some texture samples. You'd find these. These are all these boxes, right? So it's box AO, box BC, box BM, BN, box. And then it looks like there's a medium. We'll just do the normal and not the medium. So I don't need that. Right click this. There is a asset action. There is a edit matrix ends. There is going to be, it's not an import setting. Let's see if I can find it, max. So here, if we remove these max settings, leave everything else the same, or maybe if it's, maybe I gotta set it to 0. Save. Now you'll see that the light is bouncing off of this guy, and the texture resolution is, you know, a lot higher, and we're getting some surface normals here in forward rendered on UE5. Now, the light is very soft. There doesn't, you know, the material doesn't appear to have a lot of specularity. It's just feeding this in raw. Specular value is 0.5. It is what it is. In Godot, the surface has a lot of specularity on it. The wood looks more shiny. The surface normals look more shiny. And dare I say, like, maybe this is approaching like a wet look. And, you know, say you don't want that. Say that you want this thing to be far less shiny than what it is. Let's go to this material. There's the normal. I don't really want to change that. We don't have an override. Box big TRES. Let's go take a look at that. And that's under shaders. So it could be that's going to be the normal. Yeah, that's normal. We'll drag this over here. Back to old node land here. All right, so that's metallic. I don't even think there's just a color on the metallic. I don't see anything else, and I don't even see a a parameter being applied to this. So we can get rid of this. And we'll add a float to the specular. Let's do point. I don't think I need to do an operation. I just need a constant. Yeah. There we go. We don't need to go that high. Let's do 0.02. All right. Let's go back here. Yeah. So if you want to take some of that specular information out of the object, you can always come into your material. I mean, these are like basic things. No one's really got to go crazy telling you, and it kind of just depends on the look that you want. Some people want that that little bit of gloss on their wood to show that the surface is, you know, I guess a little glossy. Me, I tend to favor cutting back the specular and using the roughness values. Just because I guess I've gotten used to that. Like, a surface is going to be more smooth or not based on its roughness value, and it's just like an artistic preference for me. But some people do like that very shiny, wet look. That's just not my flavor. Let's hit play on this scene and walk over there and look at it actually. And yeah. So obviously a very different look. This has got this like little sheen on it, even behind the shadow here. It's got this ambient lighting, soft sheen applied to it, which you could see it on the floor here too in Unreal. It just has a different way of dealing with lighting and forward than I think Godot does. And this is going to be something that like you have to actually dive deeper into the rendering pipeline to be like, okay, I want this to behave differently than what it actually does by default in Unreal. If you want to dive into changing that behavior, and you can probably pump the roughness values with a multiply and get something very, very, very close to that as you get less and less rough. Or if you want to, you know, basically add back this sheen here, but then add some roughness to compensate for it. That's a little strong. It's a little better. Yeah. So these things are just going to boil down to like the look that you want to go for. Now, if you want to say you're like, okay, well I have this texture, and what do I do now? Like I have a texture 2D. I want my albedo to do what yours did. Well, you can add this parameter. And we'll just call it like color. And let's make note of where this is, T-box BBC under bunker and then textures. Okay, so then we'll draw this here. The type is no longer going to be the texture. It's going to be the sampler port. And then bunker box BBC. And then we got to go find this guy, not that guy. That guy can be closed. This guy. There's the color, and we're just going to drag that over to the color parameter, and we're back. Now, you will see that we have noticeable changes here because we have to do this for the other textures that are referenced here. So the normal, the AO, etc., etc. Albedo. No, I actually like that point too. Diffuse. That's really cool. You can actually disable specular altogether at the material level on the flags. That's cool. Yeah. Anyway, I can sit here and tweak this stupid thing all day. What I wanted to do was show you guys coming over here, going over to the size limit. We're gonna go ahead, bump this guy down. We're gonna turn off MIPS, re-import, and then you can see here this texture is like re-imported, but it's blurry because it's not applying the right filtering. So we'll go back over here and we will change this filter to nearest. And that should have corrected the actual box itself. Oh, I changed the wrong thing. I changed the normal map, which we still need to do that on the normal. So now this should be nearest. There we go. Yeah, so now we're approaching the look that we were getting, or the desired look we want from the box to be this, you know, pixelated look that we were going after. You'll notice I didn't change the resolution of the normal map, so we're still getting like that high resolution normal detail on the box, which I think is kind of cool, honestly. Like giving you some of the details of the nails and stuff, but still kind of following this pixelated wood aesthetic. I don't know if I want, I mean, it does match the other scene on that 64 by 64, so I don't know, I'm not mad at that. But yeah, anyway, I don't want to eat up you guys' time. I'll go over more later in a future video. Probably fully flesh out the character and get that going. But I just wanted to touch base on everything, all of my exploration that I've been doing, moving this stuff over, what tools I've used, the things that I've noticed, things that you may not notice that you're paying for in UE5, even though you are. If you haven't watched the Hitch Hunters video about Airy, and you are keen on sticking with Unreal Engine as an engine to do your project, which, more power to you. I love the engine. I don't want to seem like I'm knocking it anyway. I do recommend going and watching that video because it will outline everything on your physics thread, what you're paying for as far as actors go, where ticking is occurring, how you're paying for additional UV channels, etc., etc. Some of these things that Unreal does for you, you're gonna have to not do them. You're gonna have, like he says, quote unquote, do less. If you're not utilizing memory, you're not gonna pay for it. Godot is a little bit of a different beast. It's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to hold your hand. It will offer tools for you to do the things for yourself. And pretty much if you're going to pay for something, it's because you went and made yourself pay for it. So it's just a little bit of a different mentality, a little bit of a different beast as far as the tool goes. Hope this has been useful. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Check out the Godot Studios Discord. Consider joining the Godot YouTube family and Patreon. See the links in the description. Until next time, guys, toodles and happy developing.